Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Graham Mitchell woke up that Friday morning with his usual routine: black coffee, no sugar, whole wheat toast, the newspaper open on the kitchen table while Paige got the kids ready for school. Ethan, 10, complained about having to wear his blue jacket. Sophie, 8, hummed a song she'd heard on the radio. Graham watched the quiet scene unfold with a feeling he couldn't name. After 12 years of marriage, some things just became automatic. At 41, Graham had built a respected career as a university literature professor. His students described him as patient, meticulous, and deeply passionate about his work. Colleagues saw him as a balanced man, the kind who rarely lost his composure. Paige, meanwhile, worked as a human resources manager at a mid-sized company. At 39, she took pride in her position and the professional network she'd built over the years. To neighbors and friends, they were a successful couple living the American dream in a quiet suburb. But Graham knew something had shifted in the past few months. Small things at first. Paige started complaining more often. She said he was too predictable, that their life had become boring, that she needed more excitement. Graham tried to understand. He suggested trips, different dinners, new activities. Paige dismissed them all with disdain, as if any effort he made was automatically not enough. He began to feel like he was under constant judgment, and the verdict had already been decided. That Friday night, after the kids were upstairs doing homework, Paige walked into the living room wearing a tight black dress Graham didn't recognize. The neckline was deeper than she usually wore. The high heels made her legs look endless. Her makeup was elaborate, lips a bold red. Graham set down the book he was reading and studied her carefully. "Corporate party tonight," Paige announced, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Don't wait up." Graham felt a tightness in his stomach. He knew these parties. He'd heard stories. He knew Paige's boss, a divorced man named Richard, had a questionable reputation when it came to female employees. More than once, Paige had mentioned his inappropriate comments, always laughing them off like harmless jokes. "Paige, can we talk for a minute?" Graham kept his voice calm, the professor tone he used when he wanted to be heard without sounding authoritarian. She rolled her eyes. "Here we go. I'm worried about this environment. You've said yourself how heavy these parties get. And Richard. Richard is my boss, Graham. It's work. Networking. Do you understand the concept, or do I need to draw it?" The sarcasm cut deep. Graham took a slow breath before continuing. "I'm not saying you can't have a social life. I'm saying this specific event, with these specific people, worries me. You've complained about his behavior yourself." Paige crossed her arms. "You're unbelievable. 12 years married and you still don't trust me?" "I trust you. I don't trust the situation." "Same thing." Graham stood up from the sofa. He walked over to her and looked her in the eyes. There was something there he didn't recognize. A spark of defiance, maybe. Or contempt. He swallowed before speaking. "Paige, I'm going to be direct because I don't know how else to talk to you. If you go to that party, our marriage is over. This isn't an empty ultimatum. It's the truth. I'm asking you to choose." The silence lasted only seconds, but it stretched for hours. Paige stared at him with an expression Graham would never forget. Pure contempt, mixed with something that looked like cruel satisfaction. "I'm going anyway," she said slowly, savoring each word. "You stay here being the pathetic man you are. You don't get to tell me what to do." She grabbed her bag, checked her phone, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Don't wait up." The door slammed hard enough to shake the pictures on the wall. Graham stood in the same spot for several minutes, processing what had just happened. He heard light footsteps on the stairs. Sophie appeared in the hallway, her eyes wide and worried. Dad, is Mom mad? Graham forced a smile. No, sweetie. Mom just ran late. Let's finish your homework. He spent the next few hours focused on the kids. He helped Ethan with math, read a story to Sophie before bed, made sure they were both comfortable in their beds. When he finally came down to the empty living room, the clock read 10:30. Graham sat in the armchair and stared into nothing, trying to sort through his thoughts. His phone buzzed at 11:47. It was a message from Bennett, a colleague of Paige's that Graham knew from past events. Bennett was married, held traditional values, and had always treated Graham with genuine respect. The message was short: Graham, I need to call you. It's urgent. Graham answered on the first ring. Bennett, what happened? Graham, man, I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but you need to know. I'm at the party. Paige is, she's completely out of control. Graham's heart raced. What do you mean? She drank way too much. Way more than she should have. And she's... Graham, she kissed Richard. In front of everyone. And it wasn't just him. Graham felt his legs weaken. He sat back down, gripping the phone tightly. Bennett, are you sure? I have videos. I'm sending them. You need to see it with your own eyes. I'm sorry, man. You're a good man, and you don't deserve this. The videos started arriving. The first showed Paige at the bar, laughing loudly, glass in hand, clearly drunk. The second was worse. She was dancing provocatively with Richard, whose hands were on places they shouldn't be. The third video made Graham feel sick. Paige kissed Richard openly, with no shame, while coworkers clapped and whistled around them. The fourth showed her kissing another man, one Graham didn't recognize. The fifth, another. But what shattered Graham completely was the sixth video. Paige was in a group of women, all drunk, yelling and laughing, "My husband is a wimp. Do you believe he tried to stop me from coming? Pathetic." Graham watched the videos 3 times. The first time, he felt anger. The second, deep sadness. The third, something inside him changed. A strange calm settled over him. It was as if all his emotions had been burned away, leaving only cold clarity. Bennett kept sending updates through the night. Paige got more drunk, more uninhibited. At one point, she could barely stand. Graham saved every video, every photo, every message. Methodically. Without haste. At 3:12 a.m., he heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, he saw Paige being practically carried out by an Uber driver. The man helped her to the door, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Graham opened it before she could find her keys. Paige stumbled in. Her dress was crumpled, her hair messy, her makeup smudged. She smelled of alcohol, cigarette smoke, and a man's cologne that wasn't Graham's. She didn't even look at him. She went straight to the sofa and collapsed, unconscious within seconds. Graham stood there watching her for a long time. The woman on the sofa was the mother of his children. The person he'd shared 12 years of life with. And she'd destroyed everything over one night of ego and alcohol. He didn't sleep. He spent the next hours working silently. First, he went to the bedroom and packed her bags. He folded each piece of clothing methodically, organized her shoes, separated her toiletries. He filled 3 large suitcases and 2 boxes. Then he took photos of the evidence, the stained dress, her phone with visible messages on the lock screen, the deplorable state she'd come home in. Next, he sat at the computer and wrote an email to Harrison, the best divorce lawyer in the area. He explained the situation briefly, attached a few videos, and requested an urgent meeting. Finally, he organized financial documents, bank statements, the house deed, car titles, everything he'd need for the process. When the first rays of sunlight came through the window, Graham was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee. He heard the kids stirring upstairs. He rushed up and intercepted them before they came down. "Good morning," he said with a forced smile. "How about we have breakfast outside today? Beautiful day." Ethan frowned. "Where's Mom?" "Mom got home late from work. She's resting. Let's let her sleep, okay?" Graham made pancakes for the kids, served them outside in the backyard, away from the living room where Paige was still passed out. He kept the children occupied until Bennett, answering Graham's desperate plea, arrived to take them. He said he'd take Ethan and Sophie to spend the day with his own kids. The children left happily, unaware their lives were about to change forever. With the house empty except for the unconscious Paige, Graham waited. He sat in the living room armchair, facing the sofa, and waited. At 11:43, she began to stir. Low moans first, then more abrupt movements. Finally, her eyes opened. Paige took several seconds to realize where she was. The headache was clear in her twisted expression. She tried to sit up, groaning. Then she saw the suitcases. 3 large suitcases and 2 boxes neatly arranged in the center of the room. Her clothes. Her belongings. Paige blinked several times, as if trying to wake from a nightmare. Her eyes scanned the room until they found Graham, sitting still in the armchair. "Graham? What's happening?" He didn't answer right away. He stood slowly, walked to the center of the room, and stopped between her and the suitcases. His face showed no anger, no sadness, no recognizable emotion. It was a mask of neutrality that frightened Paige more than any shout ever could. "Graham, talk to me. Why are my things packed?" He raised his phone to her eye level. "Watch." The first video began to play. Paige saw herself, drunk, laughing like a reckless teenager. The second showed her dancing with Richard. The third, the kiss. The fourth, another kiss with another man. The fifth, yet another. And then the sixth video, where she yelled to her friends about her weak and pathetic husband. The color drained from Paige's face. She covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "Graham, I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. You have to understand." "Understand what, Paige?" His voice was calm, almost gentle, which made it even more disturbing. "That you chose to go to that party knowing exactly how I felt? That you called me pathetic in front of your coworkers? That you kissed your boss and 2 other men while our children slept at home? It was a mistake. A horrible mistake. I wasn't thinking straight." "No," Graham shook his head slowly. "The mistake was mine. For 12 years, I tried to be the husband you needed. Patient when you complained. Understanding when you criticized me. Present when you ignored me. The mistake was believing my effort meant anything to you." Paige began to cry. Thick tears rolled down her smudged face. "Graham, please. We can talk. We can do therapy. I'll change, I promise. Think about the kids." "The kids?" For the first time, a spark of anger flashed in his eyes. "Did you think about the kids when you left dressed like that? When you called me pathetic? When you kissed 3 different men at a work party? Don't use our children as a shield now. Give me a chance. One chance to fix this." Graham walked to the window and stood with his back to her for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was nearly a whisper. "What hurts me most, Paige? It's not the kisses. It's not the physical betrayal. It's the fact that you've known me for 12 years and still chose to humiliate me publicly. You knew Bennett would be there. You knew he'd tell me. And yet, when you screamed that I was a wimp and pathetic, you didn't care. Maybe you even wanted me to hear." "No. I was drunk, I wasn't thinking." "Exactly. You weren't thinking. About me. About the kids. About anything but yourself. He turned to face her again. You have 2 hours to leave this house. My lawyer will contact yours to discuss the terms of the divorce. Joint custody of the kids, equal division of assets. I won't try to destroy you financially, even though I have every right. I'm doing this for our children, not for you. Graham, don't do this. Please. I love you. He let out a bitter laugh, the first genuinely emotional sound he'd made since she woke up. Love. You don't know what that word means, Paige. Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't disrespect. What you feel for me isn't love. It's convenience. I'm the stable guy who pays the bills while you chase excitement elsewhere. Paige stood from the sofa, still unsteady from the hangover. She tried to approach him, but Graham raised his hand in a stop gesture. No. Don't come near me. Don't try to touch me. That intimacy, you lost it forever. Graham, I beg you. 2 hours, Paige. Call someone to come get you. Your mom, your sister, a friend. I don't care. But in 2 hours, you won't be in this house anymore. He walked toward the stairs but stopped before going up. And Paige? When you go to work Monday and see Richard, remember one thing. He got exactly what he wanted. You lowered yourself to his level. And me? I'm rebuilding my life without you. The difference is, I have dignity. You lost yours in a bar, over free drinks and cheap validation. Graham climbed the stairs without looking back. He locked himself in the bedroom he'd shared with her for over a decade and sat on the bed, finally letting the tears fall. He cried silently, the sound muffled by the pillow pressed against his face. Downstairs, he heard Paige sobbing, making calls, dragging suitcases. 2 hours later, when he finally came down, the house was empty. The divorce process lasted 6 months. Harrison, the lawyer, did an impeccable job. With the evidence provided, Graham could have secured far more favorable terms, but he insisted on a fair split. I don't want my children growing up hearing that their father destroyed their mother financially, he explained to Harrison. The lawyer respected his decision, though he clearly thought Graham was being too generous. Custody of Ethan and Sophie was shared, alternating weeks with each parent. It was the hardest part for Graham, getting used to an empty house every 15 days. But he dedicated himself to making the time with his kids special. Quality over quantity, he reminded himself. Paige kept her job, though she was transferred to another department. Rumors about the party spread like wildfire, and she became the subject of whispered gossip down the hallways. Richard, the boss, was fired 3 months later when other employees filed formal harassment complaints. Irony of fate, Paige thought. The man she'd ruined her marriage for wasn't even still at the company. The first month after the divorce was finalized, Paige kept her distance. Maybe out of pride, maybe out of shame. But in the second month, attempts at reconciliation began. First came text messages. Long, emotional, full of regret. Graham read each one, but never replied. Then came the calls. He let them go to voicemail. The messages were always the same: she'd changed, she was in therapy, she understood her mistakes, she wanted another chance. In the third month, Paige started showing up at his house. She rang the doorbell with some excuse related to the kids. She needed to pick up something she'd forgotten. She wanted to discuss a school detail. Graham treated her with cold politeness. Polite, brief, distant. Never rude, but never warm. Gifts started arriving in the 4th month. Books he'd said he wanted. A bottle of wine he liked. Tickets to literary lectures. Graham returned them all with short notes: "Thank you, but I can't accept." In the 5th month, Paige moved to handwritten letters. Page after page where she poured out her heart. She described her therapy, her revelations about her behavior, the changes she'd made in her life. She promised to be a different person. Graham read the letters with a neutral expression and filed them away, never replying. The 6th month brought a different tactic. Paige began showing up at school meetings when it wasn't her week to have the kids. She sat near Graham, tried to strike up conversation, made herself visible and changed. He kept interactions strictly about the children, refusing any opening for personal topics. In the 7th month, she involved mutual friends. Bennett, ironically the same one who'd sent the videos, was approached by Paige asking him to intervene. Bennett, uncomfortable, mentioned the situation to Graham. "She seems genuinely sorry, man. Maybe you should talk." Graham thanked his friend for his concern, but was clear, "Some things can't be undone, Bennett. She needs to accept that." The 8th month saw Paige trying to use the children. During the weeks she had Ethan and Sophie, she subtly planted seeds. "Wouldn't you like it if Dad and Mom lived together again?" The children, confused and hopeful, mentioned these comments to Graham. He sat with them and explained, as gently as possible, that some adult decisions are final, and that his love for them would never change no matter where they lived. The 9th month brought Paige's family into the equation. Her mother called Graham, begging him to give her daughter another chance. "She's suffering so much, Graham. You've always been a good man. Show compassion." Graham listened patiently and replied, "With all due respect, ma'am, compassion doesn't mean accepting disrespect. I genuinely wish Paige well. But I won't be her husband again." In the 10th month, the attempts became desperate. Paige showed up at a dinner where she knew Graham would be. She approached his table with tears in her eyes. "Give me 10 minutes, Graham. Just 10 minutes to talk." He finished his meal calmly, left money on the table, and stood. "Paige, you need to move on. I already have. Continuing this only hurts you." He left the restaurant without looking back. The 11th month marked a turning point. Graham met Fiona at a book club he attended on nights he didn't have the kids. She was a widowed librarian, 3 years younger than him, with a gentle smile and intelligent eyes. They talked about literature, about life, about new beginnings. There was something comforting about her presence, a calm that matched his own. After a few weeks of friendship, Graham invited her to dinner. She accepted. In the 12th month, Graham and Fiona were officially dating. He introduced her to his children carefully, respecting each child's time to adjust. Ethan was receptive from the start. Sophie took a little longer, but Fiona's patience and kindness eventually won her over. It was a genuine fresh start, built on mutual respect and honest communication. Paige found out about Fiona through social media. Graham posted a simple photo, him and Fiona in a park, smiling naturally. Nothing flashy or provocative, just two people happily together. Paige saw the photo during lunch at work. She stared at the screen for several minutes, feeling something inside her finally break. That night, she didn't send messages. She didn't call. She didn't show up at his house. She sat in her empty apartment, staring at the walls, and finally let the full weight of reality hit her. Graham had moved on. Not just in words, but in truth. He'd found someone new, was building a new life, and she wasn't part of it. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, Paige saw Graham and Fiona at a local restaurant. They were at a table near the window, talking animatedly. Fiona said something and Graham laughed, that genuine laugh Paige hadn't heard in years. She watched from afar, seeing how relaxed he looked, how his shoulders no longer carried the tension she'd grown used to. Beside him, Fiona radiated a serenity Paige deeply envied. In that moment, Paige understood. It wasn't about whether she'd changed or not. It wasn't about deserving a second chance. It was about the fact that Graham had found peace, and that peace didn't include her. All the messages, gifts, letters, and appearances wouldn't change that. She'd had her chance, thousands of chances, and she'd wasted them all. She went home and, for the first time in a year, didn't think about how to win him back. She thought about how to rebuild herself. Not for Graham, not to impress anyone, but for herself. She called her therapist and scheduled an extra session. She began asking herself not, how do I get him back, but, how did I become someone capable of doing what I did? Graham never knew about that afternoon at the restaurant. He continued his life with Fiona, building something new and healthy. The kids adjusted well to the new dynamic, and he became an even more present and attentive father. On the weeks he had Ethan and Sophie, the house filled with laughter, family dinners, and game nights. On the weeks without them, he enjoyed time with Fiona, exploring restaurants, attending cultural events, simply existing in peace. Paige stopped trying. When they met to exchange the kids, she kept conversations brief and cordial, sticking to practical matters. No more pleading looks or subtle attempts at reconnection. Just two people sharing the responsibility of raising two children, nothing more. On a certain autumn Sunday, nearly 2 years after that fateful party, Graham was in the backyard of his new house, helping Ethan with a science project. Fiona was making lemonade in the kitchen while Sophie drew at the garden table. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the well-kept lawn. Graham paused what he was doing and watched the scene for a moment. Ethan focused on his calculations, Sophie humming softly as she colored, Fiona appearing with a tray of drinks and a warm smile. He didn't feel anger toward Paige anymore. What he felt was a kind of twisted gratitude. She had freed him, even if in the most painful way possible. She forced him to discover he deserved more than clingy acceptance and conditional love. She showed him, through her betrayal, that he was capable of rebuilding, of loving again, of finding someone who truly valued him. When Fiona sat beside him and intertwined her fingers with his, Graham smiled. Not a forced or rehearsed smile, but one that came from deep contentment. He had found his way back to himself, and in the process, discovered the path continued, leading him to places better than he'd ever imagined. Paige, meanwhile, continued her journey of self-discovery. She didn't become a destroyed villain or a redeemed heroine. She simply became a woman dealing with the consequences of her choices, learning to live with the weight of having lost something precious for a moment of inflated ego. On good days, she saw her personal growth. On bad days, regret consumed her. But every day, the lesson remained clear: some doors, once closed, don't open again, no matter how hard you knock. Graham never forgave her in the sense of forgetting. But he released his anger, which was a different kind of forgiveness. He kept building his life, brick by brick, with patience and determination. And on that autumn afternoon, surrounded by his children and the woman he'd chosen to stand beside him, he knew with absolute certainty that the man sitting in that backyard wasn't the same man Paige had called pathetic on that distant night. He was a stronger, wiser, infinitely freer man. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.